Weirdcore is a strange genre to encapsulate into words. Have you ever looked at an image that fills you with confusion, dread, comfort, loneliness, serenity, and horror all at the same time? Maybe you have, and followers of this specific genre of art and music might also basically understand exactly what I'm describing. Weirdcore, to me, is something that represents a sort of umbrella term. It represents a large net of strange media on the internet. Yet at the same time, its conceptualization is so new and profound that it's really hard to set a very standardized definition for it. The wiki definition of weirdcore on the aesthetics wiki is as follows. Weirdcore is a surrealist aesthetic centered around amateur or low-quality photography and or visual imaging that has been constructed or edited to convey feelings of confusion, disorientation, dread, alienation, and nostalgia, or anemia. Thematically, weirdcore often conveys a feeling of dread, brought forth by its low-quality imagery and lack of context in regards to the location or the message being shown. And they have a cute little example on the side that kinda represents what they say weirdcore is. But this is goofy. To me, weirdcore is a lot more than just that. Many threads depict weirdcore in a much more different light. They focus on a lot more of that loneliness, that dread, that discomfort. Sure, weirdcore at its core is something that just feels weird. Ultimately, I believe weirdcore can be used to describe many of the strange genres on the internet, that cause this generation to feel a sort of sense of longing, serenity, or discomfort, nostalgia. I think the most powerful aspect of weirdcore is its lack of context that they leave to, have the viewer fill in the gaps. What does the image mean? How should I interpret this? What exactly is the purpose of it? There really isn't a correct answer. Its main goal is just to make you feel weird. That's the name of the game. Weirdcore isn't defined solely by images and art either. Weirdcore is also a music style. As weird as it sounds, generally creators of weirdcore don't create music with weirdcore in mind. Many of the references to weirdcore music derive from previously existing media, soundtracks from games, weird music created by formidable artists, essentially any form of media that invokes this sort of feeling that weirdcore attempts to employ, and in a lot of cases with a little bit of amateur production value. Weirdcore doesn't really have a set of rules. Weirdcore is less defined by the media itself and more defined by the intended emotional response of the individual consuming that media. And I think that's what makes it so interesting to me. It's a genre without a strict set of creator rules. That makes weirdcore so versatile that media created years ago before its conception can even end up falling right in place with the genre no problem. It's nonsensical, yet rhythmic. It's mystical and mysterious. It's confusing and thought-provoking. It's non-threatening but discomforting. It's nostalgic but new. It's warped yet familiar. It's distorted yet intentional. It's white noise but black noise. Loud yet soft. Echoing, suicidal. Help me please. Yet I'm trapped here. I want to get out. I can't think fast enough. We're going about here. We're going about. You might be most familiar with this style of imaging. We call it the liminal space. A great urban vastness, surrounded by an eerie lack of people within it, almost abandoned yet familiar. This image should have people, but it doesn't. This style of imaging has been recently popularized due to its kind of nostalgic, mystical roots. A liminal space doesn't really have an effect when you put people in the image. However, when it's empty, something about it feels way more eerie. And yet, there's a huge reason for that. It's like, we know this image should have people. And it's this place somewhere in the roots of our memory, but it's so far back in our memories, it's almost comparable to an abandoned husk of what it used to be. I think the real reason liminal spaces have such a deep effect on people is because they're visual representations of abandoned memories. Memories in the forms of places we've been. I consider liminal spaces as a subgenre of weirdcore. It causes the same emotional response as some weirdcore media, and the power of liminal spaces derives from, the common generation that evokes social media. People from the same generation are the same age. They have had similar childhood experiences, and they've been to similar looking places. Many of these images represent an older time. They represent something in our past. The urban structures within these liminal spaces aren't modern, they're not contemporary. They're Cape Cod. Liminal spaces have a little bit more of a meaningful effect on people, and it's likely why they grew in popularity much more rapidly than the wider genre of weirdcore did. Liminal spaces is a much more refined subgenre of its root genre. You can look at it and identify it almost instantaneously. There's really no mistaking its identity. The feeling it intends on producing is sound and consistent, and the way it goes about doing it is always usually the same. Where are we? Why is everything misplaced? Nothing looks normal, but it looks so familiar. You ever wondered what it's like to be in a dream? Probably not. I mean, you've likely been experiencing dreams all your life. You probably know the answer. However, many people leave dreams forgetting most of the finer details of the events that even occurred in the first place. Dreamcore is sort of a branch off of weirdcore that essentially attempts to capture the essence of dreams and being in a dream. With disproportionate environments, strange text that relates to nothing remotely visible on the image, Dreamcore is one of my favorite deviations from weirdcore. It is much less threatening than the other variants, but yet it provides a way more of a mystical, mysterious feel to it. Take, for example, this image. Throughout dreams, you constantly meet and conspire with countless amounts of non-existent human beings, people that you eventually somehow relate to memories in your mind. Your brain will cause you to meet a person you think you've known all your life, when in fact you've maybe never met this person at all. Your mind fabricates mental memories all of the time without you even remembering it. And a lot of Dreamcore kind of attempts to tap into this weird mysticism. Who is this man? Why can't we fully see his face? Why can't we fully paint out the details of his face? What about the girl? Like, we can tell it's a girl, but we can't really tell what any of their distinct features are. However, we know they're there. Can you really vividly describe what you saw in your dream? Can you visibly, in detail, describe what you've seen in your dreams? Probably not, because usually you can't. And that's what Dreamcore attempts to kind of encapsulate. That feeling of recognition without the finer details of reality. Here's one of the more popular images created under the Dreamcore genre. It's even so popular that it was recreated in a Roblox game. And yeah, there's a few Roblox experiences about Dreamcore. This one's one of my favorites, because it perfectly demonstrates the disproportionality of the real dream world. It has great vastness, but still feels so close up and limited. They also really enjoy playing with the concept of eyeballs and mushrooms. That's kind of a theme that's consistent throughout Dreamcore. Dreamcore is a way more mystical form than other forms of weirdcore, and that's probably why it's one of my personal favorites. I think Dreamcore speaks to me personally because it kind of attempts to deconstruct what we know about how we perceive the world, but then still kind of attempts to tap into a completely different rendition of the world that happens in our mind on a daily basis. Dreamcore can be familiar to us, but not because it's real, not because we've been there, or because we've seen and experience these things, but because we've experienced this discombobulation of the perception in our head while we're tucked away at night. It's something to relate to in a way. Scientists still don't fully understand why we dream, and I find a lot of interest in that. Traumacore typically has pretty heavy roots. Traumacore is by far one of the most threatening variants of weirdcore out there. It's characterized by a bunch of childlike graphical themes combined with vile, almost disturbing text that outlines the feelings and thoughts of the person kind of creating it. As opposed to most other forms of weirdcore, this variant of, weirdcore is way more creator-focused. With a name called Traumacore, you can quite literally feel the essence of the name ooze out of every visual image that falls into its category. Traumacore is also different in its context, in the sense that there's way more context available to use based on the nature of the name itself. Traumacore, childhood trauma, means that us as the, consumer of the media are easily able to put together the pieces of what exactly is going on. It's way easier to find the intentions and the meaning behind these images. This genre is vague but sensible enough to draw enough meaning to absolutely disturb you. It refers to kind of the inner thoughts of a traumatized child. And the child aspect is hammered in with the cute little, graphics. Hello Kitty is a very common reoccurring theme in this form of media. I don't like Traumacore. I think it's disturbing and doesn't really fit in with the nature of what weirdcore attempts to be. it shouldn't be commodified into the genre of weirdcore. And, you know, to an extent, it's not. It absolutely isn't. But it shares so many different themes with weirdcore to the point where I feel like I ought to mention it in this video. It's very reminiscent of vent art. It's not about the observer, it's about the creator, and that goes against the very nature of what weirdcore defines itself as. It's just disturbing, traumatic media for the sake of being so. Weirdcore's cool. It provides such an interesting experience for those, you know, that seek it out, and ultimately it kind of falls right into place with the current aura of society. A lot of people are lost in our world right now. I feel like the conceptualization of weirdcore pretty heavily demonstrates that. A lot of us find comfort in embracing the feeling of being lost. Mental health has been one of the biggest discussions of the past decade. It's a bigger discussion than it's ever been. I think weirdcore is interesting to me because weirdcore kind of reminds me of what it's like to be depressed, what it's like to have a clinical illness. You feel things, but you really don't know why. And something about that is just really powerful. If you've ever sat down and listened to the entirety of The Caretaker, Everywhere at the End of Time, you can fully kind of understand where the beauty of this type of genre comes from. It's a very good representation of people that are lost in their emotions. I know some people see it as this cute, quirky thing, but I've seen some renditions of weirdcore that have genuinely made me kind of awestruck in the beauty of it.